All right, so first, in order to kind of get everything started, I myself am Caleb, the dungeon master for your guys' campaign. You guys already know me from all of our stuff. We're also going to be talking to Narwhal, aka Gruk, from our campaign session. Gruk, do you want to go by Narwhal? Do you want to go by Gruk while we're talking through here? Or you tell me what you'd like to go by.
Uh, I think I'll go by Narwhal
You can go by
because
Narwhal?
you're talking to the player about who my character is.
Not a big deal. Some of the questions might be directed towards you. Some of the questions might be about the character. Feel free to answer however you want. But we're going to be kind of jumping in here super quick with those two things about talking the difference between the player and the character. So what I want to know, and I'm sure others probably want to know, is kind of how did you come to name Gruk? That's a very not outlandish name, I wouldn't say, but it's definitely unique. It's different. So I mean, how'd you come to name Gruk?
Yeah. Well, I mean, compared to Navira Midvalor or Gwendiel Runerock
Some of your other
or
party members in this current campaign.
yeah, some of the other party members, you know, with first name, last name, and then there's just Grok.
Some
There's
people,
not a last name.
yeah, some people don't have a last name. There's Cher, Fergie, technically Fergie Fergalicious or Fergie Ferguson, but I mean, however you want to go about it. But I mean, Grok doesn't need to have a last name, or maybe he does. We don't know.
Well, we'll get into that. We'll
We'll
get
get into
into
that.
that
Not a big deal. Not a big deal.
because
But yeah,
you are talking to the player, not character of Gruk, and the player knows more about Gruk than Gruk knows about himself. So,
interesting. I don't know if I've ever heard that phrase that way.
yes.
But okay, so then you, Narwhal, how did you come to name Gruk?
Well, with the announcement of the DM wanting to do a Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition campaign
Hmm.
set in the Out of the Abyss module.
Just gonna go ahead and start ticking off all the boxes like you've been given something to read off a prompter.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Uh and also I knew with me being the most experienced player,
Okay.
well, experienced in the fact that I've played Dungeons and Dragons more than the rest of the players. I knew I wanted a tanky frontline character to be able to take hits. That way, the other people on the campaign could get more fighting and action, and bada
Cool,
bada
cool.
blah. I'm doing damage and stuff instead of having to worry about their hit points, along with worrying about the weapon systems and such. Because I know that can get confusing. I still get confused on it a lot of the times, just because I have a +5 to hit. What the hell does that mean?
Fair enough. There can be some confusing times, especially in a lot of our combat encounters. I know I myself am still learning. Definitely, as you spoke, that you've got the most experience. I would definitely say more playtime than some of the others in our
Yeah,
campaign.
playtime, not necessarily experience though.
But hey,
I've
I
been
mean,
playing since I
all
was
translates very well. You're able to take a look at some of the rules and be like, I've already played with this rule, or you don't even have to think about it. You're just like, here's what it is, and you don't have to worry about anything additional to it. But no, we're wanting
yeah.
to jump into how you came to name Grok. We're not talking about the rules or anything like that. I want to
I know.
know.
I'm sidetracking. I'm sorry. It happens. ADHD and ADD.
Oh
But
goodness.
I wanted to have someone that would tank more hits in the campaign, so that way the characters could be their character, so they could attack with
Okay.
their weapons. And I'm getting back to that track. I'm sorry. And
You're good.
so I
I,
knew I
I,
wanted
I
to.
don't know. Maybe this is the entire story behind it. I'm sitting here thinking that
Yeah,
the more I'm hearing about it is that Gruk is the sound that is made when you get hit. You go, Grok.
girl. Maybe I don't know. I
Maybe.
might
Are
have.
you telling me that you did
I
not
might have to
have.
steal that. I might have to steal that. You never know.
Okay.
Anyway, I knew I wanted an orc because I know orcs are more tanky, more versatile with combat. They can really single out a target,
Gotcha.
and orcs can tank. So I had the orc race already selected from the get go, and I have another character called Kurg, who is a Goliath, and that's a part of another campaign, different people. And I just thought, well, let's switch it around because Goliaths and orcs are in at least the D&D 5e lore they kind of come from the same area with like the different pantheons and gods and such.
Oh, okay.
So I switched it around and Gruk was born.
Funny,
I liked
funny
Gruk
enough.
too much.
So you had a previous character in another session you're playing called Kurg, and now you have Gruk in
Yeah,
this session. Interesting.
yeah. Kurg is a Goliath who is just an absolute badass, but that's not a part of this campaign.
Fun
He's not a
enough
part of
enough.
this campaign. I don't want to talk about him anymore because I really miss him. I haven't played him in a long time.
Well, hopefully they get to come back soon. But interesting to
Yeah.
know about the legend, the lore behind Gruk coming from stemming off from some of your previous creations. I guess that kind of leads directly into kind of another question relating to Gruk is who is Gruk? To kind of give more depth to the character that you have created.
So I wanted to have Gruk play off of his whole military background,
Okay.
where obviously from a military background, you don't really trust outsiders unless they're someone from camp or from your branch of military or whatever. So he's got a hardy shell in terms of not trusting outsiders and such, and he won't respect you or really even like you until he sees you how you can handle yourself, fight or battle.
Hmm.
Because then, after understanding your tactics and ways of fighting, he will then try and be a leader for you and will want to help you improve upon those skills and talents that you have.
So
I've
like
not really,
a like a strong man, strong man.
yeah, essentially.
Interesting.
He will want to help you better yourself in terms of, oh, you could do this better, or try and do this instead of going along with this route. You
So
know,
my
I
question to you then, kind of like learning a little bit more about that. I don't uh, know of anything off the top of my head, but can you maybe expand upon some things that has happened in the campaign thus far to where Gruk has kind of had that being able to show that very much that strong man, learning about some of the other players he may have run into, learning about some of the other NPCs he may have run into, where he's kind of had to, not had to, but was able to have that show and come out.
well, I haven't really honestly really tried to play off of that,
Oh, okay. No
honestly.
worries.
So hopefully in the future, after recent events that have occurred, he can really try to step up and be like, hey, I want to get back to who I was, the leader that I was in my military.
Hmm. So kind of like their own miniature character arc, I would say. So like a redemption of some sorts, or
Redemption,
maybe we're leading a little bit too much into some things that are going to come up later on in this interview.
perhaps, yeah.
No worries.
I'm I'm
Um,
hope I'm hoping to get Greg. We're not in Gracklestug. Or well, yeah, we're in Gracklestug, aren't we? Yeah, we're in
right
Gracklestug.
now, so spoilers ahead of time in case this is seen later on, or out of order rather. But yes, right now in the current setting is that Gruk is currently in Gracklestug with their other party members.
I almost said Grack,
Grak.
like referring to my character as Grack. So, but yeah, I
Maybe a
want
new nickname that comes out later.
Grack.
But okay, I mean, is there any more to tell about like who is Gruk? Do you want to talk about and anything additional with who Gruk is now?
He really tries to hold on to the past because the past is who he was, and without the past, he doesn't know where to go. He doesn't know how to be or what to do.
Hmm, interesting. So Gruk is definitely someone who focuses on the past, like as you say. So do you find that as Gruk, it's hard to kind of break out of that rigidity? So if things happen around him, it's kind of just already creating the narrative for Gruk. He just kind of follows what is happening, doesn't deviate too much.
He tries not to deviate too much, but
Is that
with
from the military background that he has? So kind of like a very strict regimen
yeah, with the whole military thing, he before he left, he tore off a piece of a banner from
before he left.
camp before he left the Blade Bazaar, which is where he was training for the military and being in the military. So before leaving the Blade Bazaar, he tore off a piece of a banner just as a reminder
Hmm.
of this is who I was.
Interesting. And so this is something that he's kept with him this entire time.
Yeah.
Interesting. And then being back in this area for Gracklestug, the location of the Blade Bazaar, has that brought back any like memories to him, or
Yeah, for sure.
do you care to share any, or is that something you're kind of still
Well,
holding on to?
well, he mentioned to one of the NPCs that uh, outside noises. There was a NPC of a tavern, and he mentioned, "Hey, I used to train here." And that NPC mentioned, "Oh, hey, I might have someone that wants to see you." And it was Kurg, not from my
This is
Kurg.
an alternate Kurg, or maybe not even
Alternate,
alternate. This is just a
alternate
different
dimension Kurg.
universe. This is a different
Alternate dimension.
universe, so not necessarily that they share like any resemblances or mirror images of each other. This is an entirely unique NPC for this universe. Just so happened to share that same naming convention as another character that you've created previous.
Yeah. And Kurg is someone that really hit Gruk in the feels
Hmm.
area, especially being in the military. And obviously, when you're in the military, you can't really have any relationships.
No,
You can have, yeah, obviously, you can have friendships, but relationships are kind of a no no
like a
because
brothers and
obviously,
sisters in arms kind of relationships more so.
yeah. But Kurg really just hit something with Gruk, and Gruk has still yet to really face it
Hmm.
and really like what's the word I'm looking for?
Process,
Confront it. Confront.
confront it.
Confront his feelings.
Hmm. Say, I
Because
believe the background that was chosen for this interview is that of Kurg's little hut or home that she has in Gracklestug. So hopefully this kind of brings you a sense of warmth rather than that of like a coldness being inside of here.
yep.
No comment.
Gruk. Yep. That's Kurg's home. Yep.
Fair enough. So to kind of wrap up the who is Gruk, and we're kind of reaching into some more of like the backgrounds of them. Do you have what is some more background to Gruk? You keep talking about this military background. There's some NPCs that have recently come to light in this campaign that have a tie-in back to Gruk's military background. I mean, is there a reason like how Gruk got into this military? Is there something else that's missing inside of here? Is he still in the military, or anything like that you'd like to expand upon?
Well, I'll get back to the whole how did Gruk get into the military later,
Okay.
being but I'll go with the start. So Grok kind of starts in the military and he starts getting his ranks up and this and that and he ends up getting up to rank of corporal, which in that part
Not too shabby.
is, yeah, it's not too shabby. He's able to have his own little, I guess, platoon of men. I'm not sure that's the right word because I think platoon means more more men, but platoon in this part I think would mean 10 10 or so men at least. So Grok was a leader to 10 at least members of this platoon,
Mhm.
of his own platoon.
Just
And
take a drink. Please continue.
wow, imagine.
Imagine Gruk taking care of, you know, 10 other soldiers, is what you're
Yeah.
saying? Or,
Yeah. Yeah, Grok was at one time taking care of other people.
I mean, are any of those people anyone that you care to name, or were they just kind of just, you know,
Well,
Military is as
there were
military
some
does. Names get cycled out.
notable ones, but yeah, during in the military, they get cycled through the platoons to make sure, okay, do you have your right leader? Is this the person that you're able to most comfortably be in battle with? Da 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 da. This and that. But there was the most notable one was Bubba.
Bubba.
Yes.
Another half orc, full orc. Say, because please correct me if I'm wrong. We previously established that Gruk is orc, but I mean, is Gruk full orc, half orc?
Gruk is half orc.
Okay. So a half orc taking care of another platoon, other soldiers of assumably other orcs and half orcs as well, or
Well, I think I kind of figured out that this platoon was kind of just a mix of people.
more than just orcish races.
More than just orcs, more than just humans, more than just dwarves, elves.
Oh,
It was just a literal whole mix of people.
rather interesting. Quite a unique group.
Yeah, well, that's kind of how Gruck wanted it to be because him being the outsider when he first came in, he wants to be able to take care of the outsiders like kind of how he was, but obviously Gruck was shown resentment and was disliked among the people within the whole military base because of well his who he
Fair
is
enough.
orc.
Okay.
Hmm?
Well, let's jump back into Bubba to kind of get more information about them because it seems like this
Yeah.
person is the most stand outish to that of Gruk.
Well, like Kurg did with Gruck's feelings, Bubba kind of really mellowed out Gruck when Gruck needed to be mellowed out. Bubba always just had this sort of just chill demeanor of just laid back and not just really carefree,
Hmm.
honestly.
It's a bit of a jump from the typical military backgrounds of that of regiment and things like that. Or maybe I'm not aware of kind of how Gruk was leading these kinds of things. So to kind of just take a quick step back, how was Gruk leading these group of people?
I mean, Gruck was notably kind of tough on his men because he wanted, well, being an orc, he wanted to see the same toughness throughout his whole platoon,
Okay.
and he didn't want any lackluster or any sort of dullness with his platoon. He wanted to make sure that his platoon was as sharp as can be and always battle ready.
So these were a group of other races. Sorry. So these were a group of other races that he had included and wanted to make sure that they were the top of what at least he could like muster from there. So there was definitely a lot of strictness from it, but it seems like kind of as he was more aware of the capabilities of those around him, things became a little bit more friendlier or a little bit more warm. It seems as you're talking about Bubba being a little bit more lax and such, it seems like Gruck was very strict and very hard on some things, and then was taken aback by some of the people surrounding him.
Yeah, Bubba really like hit something within how Gruck kind of led the rest of the people throughout because Bubba joined in I would say right around the end of Gruck's leadership, like
Okay.
his corporal ranking. So due to other future events at that time, Gruck eventually had to leave.
Due to these other events. Do you want to talk about them at all, or if you don't, that's okay. We don't have to talk about everything that goes on.
I'll get to it in a future question, maybe, because I feel like that'll help.
Okay, no worries. So please continue.
But yeah, with other events that happen in the future. Spoiler alert, Bubba died.
Okay.
Gruck really fell on hard times emotionally, and not even Kurd could really get him back. get
And
him
then
back up.
so Gruk had ended up leaving the military, or
He ended up, yeah, getting discharged from his superiors.
fair enough. Did Gruk have when Gruk left? Gruk have anyone to go back to? I mean, would you like to talk about maybe was there any family that Gruk had or had come from?
No, absolutely no family.
Not even like family friends of any kind.
Nope. It was Gruk and Gruk only.
Interesting. So how did that kind of like affect him after leaving? Like what were some of the things that Gruk may have run into?
He tried his best to like stay to himself, even though being an orc, being 6 foot plus tall in other places where orcs are usually not frequented by.
So
He,
rather outlandish and definitely was a sight to see.
yeah,
Okay.
he would rather, Gruk would have rather been avoided at this time than be confronted by anyone. So that's just
So
what he preferred.
interesting. I mean, that kind of speaks to some of the things that we've seen about Gruk when playing, or rather when he's kind of going through with these adventures and things sometimes, because it seems that Gruk is rather detached sometimes from the world and kind of has different micro focuses on other things. I mean, is that relating to anything, or like what? Like, are there any experiences that you'd like to tell us about that kind of caused that behavior to come out?
Well, pertaining to the detachedness, he hasn't properly processed Bubba's death and is wanting to hold on to something to support and care for, just like Bubba did for everyone else
Interesting.
in the platoon. So, which is why you can see him make inanimate objects into something more for him, and even going so far as to give them names. Like, if you have seen the most recent episode of Jerry or Frank, the training dummy,
I believe it came out finally as being Jerry from all the flip flopping of the names.
yeah,
But okay, so giving names to inanimate objects, trying to, I guess, recreate something, or just trying to pull back lost ones. I mean, you're good. I marked the time that way it can be taken out.
yeah. Okay. So I didn't hear anything you said for the last 30 seconds.
Okay. Um. So Gruck giving names to some of these inanimate objects, the training dummy, and most recently, say I'm not aware of other items that Gruck may have had given names, or maybe he just kind of is starting to exhibit some of those behaviors more recently with some of the events coming out, and Gruck being. I'm not sure if comfortable is the right word. I'm not sure if he's losing anything. I mean, can you expand upon like why this is something that's starting to be more pronounced?
I mean, I think he's more getting back to like how he was when he first left the military. So after first leaving, he didn't really have anything to go off of other than maybe the little bit of change or the little bit of food that may have been given to him by other people.
Hmm.
So going off of that, he wants to be able to attach himself to something to be able to support and care for something rather than just have nothing at all, because he did the same thing when he was, well, basically homeless.
So let me ask you this. So after Gruck had left the military, so there was no job seeking, there was no questing of any kind. It was just more so grifting of sorts.
Yeah, grifting, drifting, just basically going from town to town.
Interesting. I would not have, pegged Gruck for that, but that is rather interesting. Um, say
Well,
with
he
that
did.
being, yeah.
Well, hmm. if you want to, yeah. Well, after he left the military, he basically lost all respect for himself.
Oh,
And so, well, because he led so many people, and then Bubba's death happening, and then he just emotionally lost himself. So then he just kind of existed. He didn't ever really live during this time. He just existed.
interesting. So
That
then to kind of jump ahead to more current times, then say I'm uncertain, perhaps the timeline that existed from when that incident happened to kind of fast forward all the way to most recently. I mean, how do you think Gruck is now handling themselves? Is there any differences? I mean, is there anyone around him that he's kind of like shown more of the side to, or is it kind of having like a relapse of sorts?
he's getting better at grasping his emotions because,
Okay.
well, with orcs, at least most orcs, they really only have one emotion, which is like hate, anger, war, blood seeking, basically. Because a lot of orcs are really and truly barbaric, and they don't really care for any other lives other than their own race and blood.
Is that more of a generalization then made amongst us? Because otherwise, you tell me if Gruck is kind of in that same vein of stuff, or has there been some kind of change?
Well, Gruk being half orc, he doesn't really know what the other half is, if he's half human or half elf or maybe even half dwarf.
Be rather interesting for a multitude of those combinations.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, yeah. Because all he knows is that, well, his mother left, and
His mother left before he was born.
it's, well, no. I'm waiting for a question to pop up so I can answer exactly how it was asked.
I mean, you if there's something that's kind of come up, I do know that I've given you a list of questions, but I mean, feel free to kind of talk about some of these things as the kind of need arises. If some of these things tie together, then I mean they tie together. That's the
I
kind of
mean,
whole
yeah,
point is this
I
kind of this be like more of an organic kind of a thing for you to talk about Gruck or for Gruck to come out and answer some things himself if he so
yeah,
chooses.
I get that, but I don't want to deviate away from the original
Oh,
question either.
no, this is entirely anything that you kind of want. If something happens, it's all good. Just talk.
Yeah. All right. So, where were we at?
So I'll go ahead and just jump to another item super quick since there's going to be a small little cut in there. So apologies. Um, there's some outside stuff kind of happening, but not a big deal. We're going to be talking about some more stuff with Gruxay. Is there kind of to jump into the list of questions as normal ones. Is there anything Gruck is worried about with some of the members that they have kind of partnered themselves with in this current endeavors that he's gone through?
Well, the main thing that being that he is more afraid of is that if these people have ever even had a leader, if not with Gruk trying to do different things to either make a leader or
Hmm.
get himself to be a leader, there seems to be no hope for a central or main goal with the group.
I mean, please expand upon that. With there being like the members he's like talked with, I mean, have there been like things that he's noticed amongst them? I mean, if there's anyone in particular you want to like speak out about, or if there's anything you've noticed where it's like, hey, there is like leadership roles that have started to establish themselves.
Yeah, Gruk for sure wants to be a leader, but after getting discharged and being told, "Hey, you're not fit to be a leader anymore,"
Hmm.
he's not sure how to get back up to those like camaraderie with a group of people anymore, to where they can really see him as, oh, Gruk can be a leader.
I mean, You tell me. I mean, what has Grok done to kind of exhibit those, behaviors to show that he does have leadership material?
Well, whenever battles and fights break out, he's usually on the front lines, usually going up against the biggest person on the battlefield
Mhm.
because he doesn't want his other like people to like have to go up against such a big like target or well not really target but such a big body of person or entity to where well they eventually end up with the same fate as Baba.
My only question to that then is this is the way that Gruk shows their leadership. And while it may have been beneficial to back then when Gruk was in the military and kind of going through those motions and around like-minded people, are you sure that the kind of characters that he's come around with most recently share those same views and say wanting to take care of the largest person in the area? I mean, by no means. I'm sure everyone's very thankful for kind of having this kind of thing dealt with, and it shows that Gruk is a very strong person and is able to handle themselves very well. But I don't know if the people that he surrounded themselves with share those same militaresque views that able to take on those large, enemies means I'm the best. Maybe they share different views, and maybe that's what Gruk is running into is kind of having a process of getting back into more of like a civilian style with that.
Yeah, I mean this is the struggle that Gruk is trying to go up against. Hello, blurriness. Can you come back? Thank you.
Say, is there anyone whom Gruk is surrounded with right now that he feels mirrors best his previous background, or is there anyone that he's trying to be most close with?
That mirrors best with his background would have to be Thak,
Thak
because
being
well,
one of the tiefling characters they've run into, kind of showing a bit of a darker background, but definitely one of more organization.
yeah, well, Gruk knows that well, while Thak hasn't really a big military background, Grok knows this character like knows how to handle himself and he knows okay, this guy has a goal, he
Hmm.
goes for that goal, he accomplishes that goal. And so Grok acknowledges that and respects that. But at the same time, Grok doesn't trust Thak because Thak is challenging or to Grok, Thak is challenging Grok's authority as
So it seems
being
like there's kind of two horses trying to get first place in that race.
yeah.
Fair enough. And so Gruck has kind of like a resentment to that, or does he
Well yeah,
show
because
like admiration towards that? Like, oh, I can respect that, but at the same token, realizes that we're both going for the same goal.
yeah. I mean, I think Grok sees Thak as trying to really become the leader of this group
Hmm.
that he well he's a part of, and Grok obviously wanting to be a leader sees the challenge and is like, well, I'm not going to trust you. I don't like you anymore. This and that. Da 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 da.
Fair enough. Well, say from what we understand is that Thak might have had some absences away from the group. Has that been a time that Gruck has taken to kind of capitalize on that? Not to say abandonment, but absence from the group.
Well, Grok has yet to really get back on track with grasping his leadership like mentality just yet.
Hmm. So, with
And
kind of the more recent events that happened, Say we don't have to necessarily to talk about directly, but with some of the more recent events that have happened, I mean, does Grok have any plans to kind of make use of his area and his surroundings to be like, hey, I can prove that I'm a leader being in here?
I think after most recent events, yeah, Gruk will attempt to essentially take back his crown and take back his leadership.
Interesting that you say that. Um, well, that's very nice that he's trying to kind of win the trust of some of those things. But I guess that kind of leads directly into the next question: is there anyone that Gruk has currently surrounding him or has met that he does not trust?
Fact.
Only Thak,
Yeah.
and
And
for the same reasons that he's trying to kind of go for the same position that Gruk appears to be going for.
yeah, relating back to being like the main leader of the group, which
Then
is
to kind of question into that, I mean, have you talked to has Gruck had time to kind of like talk with that to find if that is the intentions, or talk to other members of
no,
the group to see if they are looking for a leader to follow in that?
he has not spoken to Thak personally.
So is this like a jealousy potentially that kind of is living inside of Gruck?
Mm, maybe because he knows Thak is well organized within Thak's own job dealings. I'll say to not give too much away.
No worries. So only Thak is the only person that he's met that he's like, I don't trust this guy. Everyone else that they've run into amongst the party able to kind of get
Well,
along just fine. Doesn't think that there's any ill wills from anyone.
at the start of the entire campaign, he Gruk seriously disliked Tom Tom Barty
Tom Barty, the
because
other bard that Gruck has run
yeah, the
into,
other
seems to
bard.
be a minor theme potentially erupting from here.
Yeah, yeah. While Bubba was the more laid back in his platoon, Tom Barty just seems to kind of take the whole laid back, non serious, like almost humorous kind of attitude to a whole new level. And Gruk really, really did not like that.
Hmm. Gotcha. So Gruck is definitely more so thinking that there's probably like a time and a place for those kinds of actions.
Yeah, Gruk can understand that humor has its own place and has, its own, like, hey, it can be now or later or this or that, but not all the time. Like, Gruk sees Tom do all the time.
Hmm. Interesting. I wouldn't have seen that, but glad to hear about it now. Um, Say talking about like trust and issues and you know similar sorts of just trying to like figure out like about Gruck and like things like that. But like, what is Gruck's current kind of adventures taking him? What is Gruck's like current plan? I mean, it seems like before that with the background of being in the military, that was his life. There was nothing else to really go about that. And then when leaving for events spoken or unspoken, and it didn't seem like there was really like a plan there. It was, as you said, grifting and drifting around. Now in his current situation, I mean, is there anything that Gruck is like planning towards? Is there any goals of Gruck that are kind of going on? I mean, what are they wanting?
Gruk is most wanting to know that a mm, I wouldn't say prized possession, but like a person or entity that he most cared about is okay, and that entity being Stool.
Stool. I mean, this is the first we've heard about, hearing about Stool. Who is this to Gruck?
To Gruk, Stool was like his rock. really. And I mean, sure, Stool kind of did look like a rock,
I mean, where
literally.
did stool come from? I mean, like I said, this is the first time we're hearing about stool.
Well, for the people watching the video, yes, but for you and I, no. This is not the first we're hearing about Stool, but yeah, I digress. Anyways, Stool came from a place called Neverlight Grove, and eventually he made his way down to the start of the campaign, which is where the rest of the player characters were imprisoned, along with some other NPCs.
I don't know if we're wanting to go like so far back. I mean, just kind of just like to Gruk, who is stool. You know, this stool being to kind of give the DM side of background is a mycetid is a mycetid spore.
Yeah, that that apparently kind of took on a life of its own because other spores aren't really like stool, minus a few that we've run into in the campaign.
Hmm.
But stool was, well, really literally at the start of the campaign, kind of traveled with Gruk and the rest of the party throughout, helping to get them to Gracklestug.
Hmm.
And along all of those adventures and travels, Gruk and Stool really bonded well, and Gruk really became attached to Stool.
Did stool fill some sort of like void for Gruk, or
Yeah, I would say so.
the void being
Losing Bubba and Stool kind of mended that hole.
so for like the dynamic between Gruk and stool being that of like super closeness? I mean, when we were previously hearing about Bubba and kind of being more laid back, I mean, I don't feel that we got that same kind of emotion. Is that just because Gruk is rather reserved in a lot of these things? And so kind of getting a glimpse past this kind of iron wall of sorts is rather rare.
Yeah. Gruk doesn't really like opening up to everyone.
Fair enough. Um, Say, is there any kind of like final remarks that you'd like to talk about with Grok, or is there anything that you'd like to have um, just to talk about either as yourself or as the character?
Well, one of the main things that I really wanted to get on about, which wasn't really asked, was where did Gruk come from? Can you, or, well, the question of can you talk more about the family or on the family?
I
Well,
apologize. I believe it was asked, and it was kind of rather kind of ushered away from family and like not knowing things. It was kind of asked early on. I
well, yeah,
apologize.
but this was before the whole if you want to talk about something, talk about it. But I get sidetracked.
That's okay. If you want to talk about my stuff now, so if you want to talk about Gruk's family now,
So yeah, let's go back to the whole family thing.
all right.
Uh, Gruk's mother is named Berzel, and while he doesn't remember much about her, other than that's where he gets the orc from,
Mm.
well, his father, of an unknown race, was someone who helped his mother escape from her clan as she resented the other leaders in Berzel's clan, and then had Gruk after him and him and her escape and settling down for a little bit with this man. After he was born, his mother and father had to keep running as mom's previous tribe, Torn Skulls, were on their tracks and were wanting to kill any and all who were associated with Berzel, being that she was a top war general in her clan. And so she had information about, you know, different camps and such located throughout Faerun.
Jeez. Uh, so it's definitely the
Yeah.
first time hearing about this. This is rather interesting. If you'd like to talk about more.
Well, with the Torn Skulls, they were located in, I believe they were called, it was in the mountains somewhere. I forget the exact name, but it was right near Sundabar, above the high forest. Above the high forest. So,
Okay. Interesting.
yeah.
I'll have
Eventually,
to kind of like read more into that and say if you have more information, please do share. Otherwise, I believe these are areas that are more canon lore inside of the Forgotten Realms or Faerun, rather.
yeah. Yeah, eventually the hauling they kept doing with Grok was too much, and so they dropped him off somewhere, never to be seen again.
Oh, abandonment. Wow. Okay.
So yeah, that's where the whole thing comes back from, where Grok enters into the military, because he was then picked up by some people and taken under their wing to be a corporal.
Interesting. Well, apologies to Gruck. We did not know about. Would I mean? How would you describe that backstory? I mean, would you say tragic or more so just sad?
More sad, not really tragic. Not really tragic. If eventually, yeah, tragic events do happen, but right at the start, yeah, it's kind of sad.
Interesting. Fair enough. Is there more you'd like to divulge to us? I mean, like I said, these are a lot of like secret things that have only recently come out. I don't believe any of this stuff has come out in any of the sessions or to any of the other members of your party. Is that true?
No, not at all. Grok, while he knows his mom orc, and so that like half orc, the memories that he has of his father are not of the same with how he knows his mom.
Gotcha.
So
Gotcha.
his mom, he knows, he remembers his mom being orc, doesn't really remember who his dad is. All he knows is that dad is not orc.
Fair enough.
So maybe eventually we will run into something or someone that can lead Gruck back to mom and dad.
Maybe,
Or
and hopefully not the torn skulls, as you mentioned. That would be kind of rather devastating to, I'm sure, run into.
yeah,
Um, any closing remarks? Any closing actions you'd like to go ahead and talk about?
uh, and eventually maybe we hope to see that Gruck does get back his leader position and is able to gain the confidence around with his people. And yeah, just right now, Gruck has yet to truly grasp the leadership role back ever since being locked in prison the first time.
Mm,
And while he has tried defying the people in authority around him, tried making a name for himself again, he just doesn't know how to go about really taking power into his own hands just yet.
fair enough. Well, thank you very much for your time with all of this. So there's definitely a lot to definitely digest more towards the latter half of this. So it'll be pretty interesting to kind of see where that kind of stuff goes. And hopefully we run into some of those things as you mentioned, or rather, hopefully we don't run into those things as you mentioned. But I'm sure they'll definitely bring about for a rather dramatic situation to occur. All right, we'll go ahead and sign off. Any last word?
I miss you, Stool.
Fair enough.